going to have a fun weekend.
We're going to have a very fun weekend.
Oh, yeah.
So
Girly
lots
time.
of girly things.
Yes, it's going to be so much fun. It always feels like this, where it's like Friday is just this slog of so much stuff, and then Saturday, you don't even, like, it's just party.
I feel like I was feeling like my work was ramping down because we're getting closer to finals. I guess it still is, like, but like this weekend is so full of stuff.
I
It's
know.
not work stuff. It's just full of very fun things. It's gonna be a very fun-filled weekend.
Oh yeah, I'm looking forward to it, and we're gonna get all dressed up.
Fancy, fun,
full of girly things. And speaking of girly things, good afternoon, and welcome to On the Dome, a podcast about how non-expert college-age youth think. Except for today, it's only two of us, two girlies, talking about some girly things like the inner machinations of our mind. I feel like you are probably the person I've met who thinks the most similarly to me, like, that I've ever met.
We think very similarly.
Yes. I wonder why that is. I feel like there's a lot of similarities between us, and there's also a lot of differences. One of the similarities we both were INTPs.
Yes. And it's not supposed to be able to change, apparently, but I don't agree with that.
No. We're both definitely a lot more extroverted here.
Absolutely changed.
Although I think it's just like, I feel like the bar to be an extrovert at MIT is a hell of a lot lower than
true.
in general. Like here I'm hosting a podcast.
That's a very extrovert kind
right.
of thing.
Yeah, roping my friends into talking to me for 40 minutes.
Yeah, I like to think, like, if I went back home and I talked to the same people that I used to hang out in high school, like, would I go back to being how I was then? Or would
God, I hope not.
I know. That would be so sad.
Yeah. But I was definitely more introverted, and I feel like you and I have that experience of definitely being very in our heads and that sort of thing. We're also both Asian. Yes. By the way, who are you?
Oh, I'm Timber Carey. I go to MIT, and I'm going to be majoring in mechanical engineering and computer science-ish.
2A6.
2A6.
So
robotics.
You're a 2A6, and I'm a 6-2, which is computer science and electrical engineering.
Flipped.
We're inverses. Yes. Just another way that we're very similar. But another thing that's interesting that we've talked about a lot is how, like, our minds are on the inside, which is a very, like, odd thing to think about. It's, like, very meta. But
I've definitely been thinking about that a lot more since meeting you.
Yes, definitely. So, do you want to just go into introducing us into what your mind is like?
What is my mind like? I feel like I've thought about most in the ways that I think in terms of math. Mm-hmm. Like how I think about certain math problems and calculus and things. I feel like I have a very physical intuition. Mm-hmm. Like I always try to put things in a geometric, like physical way. I picture it physically in my mind. Like any calculus problems, like I need to have some physical way to imagine it happening. I can't just like look at the numbers and know what those mean.
It's crazy sometimes how quickly you can visualize things. We were talking just for fun about this math problem that our friend was telling us about, where, you know, if you have a square and a circle inscribed in the square, the ratios of the volume versus then you have a cube and the sphere. And as you go to an n-dimensional hypercube and an n-dimensional hypersphere, eventually the probability, the probability of throwing a dart at it.
Yeah, the ratio of the area inside the, inside the sphere to the total area in the cube goes to 0.
Yes, as you get to n dimensions. And the way you visualized it was you were thinking about the cross-sections and how each dimension is the cross-section of the next dimension. You were just able to see it so quickly.
Yeah.
It verbally...
This is not going to make any sense.
This is not going to make literally any sense. But what I mean to say is you can take a problem like that where verbally it's so complicated and you could instantly just see it. That is not how my mind works. For me, it's a lot more like that with algebra and with numbers. So everything for me is I see the numbers and I can see them moving in terms of algebraic operations. So like if you asked me to do 15 plus 7, I immediately see 5 from the 7 moving to the 15 and then the 2 being left and then it making 22.
I definitely think that sort of way with, like, algebra.
Mm-hmm.
I think calculus is, like, a whole different thing for me. Calculus is very physical, is very, like, there's always some physical interpretation, some geometric way to think about calculus, I feel like. But algebra is very much just numbers.
Even calculus, I feel like I think about it as like number lines, and like you're integrating from this part of the number line to this part of the number line, and then there's different numbers at each point in the number line. I definitely don't think of it geometrically if I can avoid it.
Yeah, I always think of any calculus problem as a graph. It's something on a 2-dimensional or a 3-dimensional graph. It's something I can visualize.
Yes. So that's like math. And I feel like I've talked to a bunch of different people about how they see math or how they do like an addition problem. But then there's also like, both of us, I think, are very interested in like how people view emotions and how people view like emotional intelligence. I think we are relatively emotionally intelligent.
Still
working on it.
We're gonna get much better.
Yeah. But I think that we were talking about all the time, like how we view people and how we like make them make sense. For me, I've told you about this. It's in my head, there is a list of rules, and this is a long list. And basically everything in my life, every conversation, it's either adding a new rule or something like that, and all of the rules are what I think about everything. And because you have so many rules, you can actually get into nuance and you can get into emotions because you just build so many like different things. And then to me, when I get new information, I just tack it onto the end of the list as like a new rule, or a new perspective can be a new rule, and then I just compare them later and see which rule I'm going to discard. But then the only problem comes is, for me, it doesn't have to be that the rules are factually true. It has to be that the rules encompass my entire perception of reality. So I have a full picture, and I don't have any ties to making sure that picture is accurate. It just needs to be all planned out. So for me, I need to have a full idea of what's going to happen or what I think about things, even if I know it's not concrete.
I definitely don't have that whole complete world picture like that. I just take things as they come, figure it out on the way.
Definitely. Yes, it's very interesting. Also, trying to like interpret people is fascinating. I feel like I'm bad at that, but getting better at that. I'm definitely a lot better at interpreting other people's feelings and telling other people what they're feeling.
You're so good at that.
than saying what I'm feeling myself. I feel like we've had conversations around like, Timber, it's what you're saying is it's just like this. This is how you're feeling.
I just tell you about something that's happening in my life, and you just tell me, this is how you feel about that. And I'm like, oh, you're so right. That is how I feel.
But it's so much easier when I'm externalizing it. I feel like that's, for me, it makes more sense to externally describe something than it is to sometimes make sense of what I'm feeling, which is hard.
I can't do either.
I feel like you totally can. I feel like you're a lot more generally aware, rather than, I feel like I can interpret situations pretty well, but I feel like you have much more of a general read on things.
Interesting.
Generally observant. Yeah. Just another way. I feel like we're always like compliments. That's why we can read each other's minds.
Yes, we totally can.
Yes, we'll just look at each other across a room and we'll say like 3 words and we'll be like, yep.
Of confusing everyone else with our telepathic conversations.
It is very funny. It's interesting too because we talk a lot about, we're both girls, but we both grew up in like, well, at least I did, and I feel like you've said also that we grew up in like more male-dominated environments. Mm-hmm. How was that for you?
It never really, like, registered as that it might be, like, an odd thing. It's just most of my friends were guys growing up. I just got along better with guys. I don't know if that was, like, a coincidence. I just happened to make friends with more guys. But, yeah. Mm-hmm. I don't really have anything, like, I don't know how it would have compared to having more female friends, but...
It was totally the same with me. I just always had a million guy friends and, like, 2 girlfriends. Mm-hmm, so it's been nice to come here and, like... Then the 50-50 thing has actually been really, like, different. to have like equal amounts of girls in all my classes.
Yeah.
It's
It's
fascinating.
a good mix here.
It is. And I feel like it's interesting though because I feel like a lot of the girls are used to being in more male-dominated environments, and the guys are less used to having that many. I think everyone's less used to having that many
Yes.
girls around. Oh, it's fun.
Weird to think about. But we're all learning how to be around each other.
Okay. What have you been thinking about lately?
Too many things. Lots of schoolwork.
Mm-hmm.
But it's slowing down. Finals are coming, and
Mhm.
gonna have a good summer.
I don't know what I feel like summer after this is gonna be so much more chill. Because I feel like MIT is very intense. It's like
I've never
everything all the
been
time.
On all the time, this hard in my life, and now I'm gonna have the chillest summer ever.
I don't know, what am I gonna be doing? I can't even picture going from this where it's like every second of every day I'm doing something to then going back to going home and just sitting in my chair and doing nothing.
Get to relax, get a break from all this thinking about things.
Too much thinking. It was especially intense, I feel like, for us going from the pandemic to then this. That transition was and you had a gap year. Tell us
Yeah.
about that.
So I had that year during the pandemic where I just wasn't doing school, and I think it was good well, I'm definitely glad that I did it because I didn't
Mhm.
have to do online school, but I think it was good in terms of my personal growth too.
Mhm.
I got to have a little break and learn more about myself before coming to college. So I'm definitely a very different person now than I was in high school. I'm not an
Mhm.
INTP anymore.
You're not an INTP anymore. What are you? You were an E. I want to say you were an ENFJ.
I think that's right.
I don't remember what that was.
ENFJ.
When I took the test, was an ENTP, which is interesting. Again, definitely become a lot more extroverted here, but now I'm an ENTP, which I think is the debater. I want to say
Oh, mine was the protagonist.
you're the
Protagonist.
you're the main character of our friend
my
group. You're the
personality type is main
protagonist.
character.
I feel like that's accurate. I feel like for me, debater is pretty accurate too.
Absolutely.
Very argumentative. I like talking a lot. And then INTP, which we both were, was the logician.
Yep.
And I think that definitely described me more in high school.
Absolutely. I felt like when I got that result in high school, that was extremely fitting to my personality. But like now, I read over it and I feel like that's not quite who I am anymore. But it still feels like that's part of who I still am, like inside.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not really how I externalize things anymore.
Well, give me an example. What were you like in high school? I want to know high school
like
Timber.
In high school. You don't want to know high school Timber.
I want to know about high school Timber.
I was very closed off. I was kind of like just in my own head all the time. I know like I got recently ENFJ. That's more
Mhm.
feeling and less thinking.
Mhm.
I definitely do a lot more feeling and externalizing those feelings now.
Yes. It's good when we learn how to communicate our
Yes.
emotions. I feel like in the similar vein, I was also in high school very private, very like, not even like a loner, but I was just very in my head
Mhm.
all the time. And I was definitely much more like thinking about what I was going to do than like talking to people or feeling or letting like that sort of thing even dictate my life or in any way. A lot more like closed off. Now I've actually learned how to talk about my feelings, and now I have a whole like hobby where I just talk to
You
people.
just have this whole
talk and talk and talk and talk.
podcast where you talk all the time. Talk about whatever
Yeah.
you want.
Yes, I basically I get guests and I get to talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. Yes,
Good.
it was so different to coming here from high school. The nice thing is you feel like you get to like be who you are now instead of who you were then. And I feel like in terms of emotions, that was definitely a big thing for me because going from being sort of nerdy, closed off type of person, private, introverted in high school, sometimes you feel like that's like the impression that you have to give people.
Mhm.
Like I felt like that was everything that people were expecting from me, and sometimes you play that up a little bit.
It's very hard to change like, who you are around certain people, which is why I think, like, having that year between high school and college was really good for me because I just got to completely reset who I was and then just come here. It's a whole new environment, new people, and just change entirely.
I feel like it definitely felt like you had a pretty strong idea of who you wanted to be, or at least you had a pretty strong, the impression I always get from you is that you either know who you want to be, or you know that you know what you want to do to find out.
Yeah.
And I feel like maybe the gap year helped with that, because I feel like I'm coming here and I'm just trying to figure out even like how to start being who I want to be.
Yeah, that's where I was in that year, and I figured that out, and now I'm here.
Yes. What did you do in the year?
Nothing. It was just COVID times, quarantining at home. So.
Did you do a lot of thinking?
I did a lot of thinking.
What's your thinking, like, activity? Like, did you just, I mean, it could be that you just sat and stared at a wall and thought and thought and thought. But, like, for
something
me,
that I did during the pandemic that gave me a lot of thinking time was I got back into crocheting. Anything, like, crafty like that. So I started making things again, and that gives you a lot of time to just sit and repetitive motions, just think about a lot of things.
I never crocheted, but I did knitting, and it was always very much like you like zen, zone out, and like it's just the stitches, and the noise is nice, and the feeling is nice.
Feels very nice.
I like repetitive things like that. It's very soothing. I feel like I'm always trying to find like something that's like mindless enough, but not too mindless. Yeah. For me, the way the way I did my thinking, at least during the pandemic, although this was also during my like junior and senior year, so I was busy, I actually got more and more into writing, which was interesting because of, you do your college essays and then you think you never want to write again. Yeah. But I actually had this really lovely experience where my high school does senior projects. So for the last month of high school, we didn't have school and we could do kind of whatever we wanted. And the thing that I did with my best friend from high school was we went on a road trip to every county in Washington, and I planned the whole trip, and then we wrote essays about each county, and there are 39 counties in Washington state. So 39 essays. We actually did the whole trip in 13 days, 3,000 miles, and all in an electric car, which was
39 essays in 13 days?
Yes, I have not actually finished all of them.
Oh,
I will.
It's a work in progress.
It's a work in progress. I finished probably 20 in those 13 days, which was spread out sort of over the course of a month. So it was 13 days of travel over a month, 20 essays then, and I'm still trying to finish the rest of them now. But it was definitely a time of, like, trying to get back into thinking about myself for myself rather than to put it on a college essay. That was such a stressful time, just like trying to put your whole self into one essay. Were you the kind of person to just do the essays one shot, or did you work on them for a long time?
I put a lot of effort into my MIT applications. I applied early action, so I spent a couple weeks doing those, and then I didn't do the rest of them, Common App ones, until like a week before they were due. And I was applying to like 15 at least other colleges on the Common App. And I just did all of those in one go, and they were really bad. So I feel like I got really lucky that I got into MIT. And
I'm sure they were great,
they didn't
but I feel like it was hard trying to convey my personality.
Yes, absolutely. You only have a few topics. You have to fit it all in somehow into these little structured essays.
Oh, yeah, it was so hard for me to try and decide what parts of my personality to, like, emphasize, because it felt like you had to, like, put yourself into little boxes. Did you have any, like, do you remember, like, what kind of stuff you wrote about?
I definitely wrote some about robotics, because robotics was a very big part of my high school experience. I wrote some about my family. That's all I kind of remember. Robotics and family.
Yes. Those are pretty good things. You still do robotics here.
Yes.
Robo team.
I plan on doing robotics for a long time.
How'd you get into that?
I've always been interested in making things and taking things apart to figure out how they work like that, but I got into actual, like, doing robotics in high school. We had a robotics team, and I joined, and that ended up being super cool. So that really developed my interest in robotics, so I decided to come here and pursue that.
I feel like robotics for me was always too, like, physicalness. Like, it felt like, well, the other thing was I had trouble getting into my robotics team because I had some bad experiences with the members of my robotics teams. Won't get into that, but I feel like robotics for me was so, like, physical and intricate, and I have less of a physical intuition than maybe you do. So for me, it was always the programming that was more interesting to me. That was what I sort of got into through robotics and then after robotics, and what I'm still into right now. But I don't know, I feel like programming just matches the way I think. It's all rules.
Yeah.
It's all, like,
You
writing
got your
down.
list of rules.
Yes. And then, do you feel like robotics matches the way you think?
Absolutely. Oh, especially, I've always been really into, like, the physical, mechanical engineering part of robotics. Like, I always liked programming, but I just never really got into it until coming here. Like, I never took the time to actually learn it, but I was always interested in the idea of programming. But I really enjoyed mechanical things, just like seeing how the physical things work and move together.
Yes. And then we've had our experiences with physics, which I think that 802, so our electricity and magnetism class, has been a very interesting experience working with you and seeing how you think about things, seeing how I think about things, seeing how our friends think about things, which is fascinating. I finally understand circuits. I feel like years and years of robotics that I tried and attempted to do, I never, like, got it, and now I finally get it. That's pretty cool.
Circuits are very cool.
Circuits are very cool. But yeah, I wish I had more of that physical intuition, and I'm trying to develop it, but definitely for me, it's more like my mind is Turing complete. It's like I have my rules, and through them I can build everything. And it's been definitely very interesting.
One other thing that we talked about that I thought was interesting was how we think about words in our minds.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, do you think about things, like, do you see the words, or how do your thoughts get collected in your mind?
I feel like, okay, there's sort of two things. I definitely remember things in terms of audio. So I remember the sound of stuff. Even for numbers, like if someone says a phone number to me, I don't remember the numbers as numbers. I remember what the audio sounded like, and then I play it back, and I'm like, oh, that was the audio of someone saying a 4, rather than remembering the digit 4 or the, like, concept 4. And then with words, it's definitely, a lot of it's audio, a lot of it's very auditory, and I remember how the word sounds, but almost, it's like how it feels in my mouth a lot. And I think that might be from speech and debate. It's just feeling, and my instinct was to say how it tastes, but that doesn't really, it's more like how it feels on my tongue and how it feels in my mouth.
Yeah, I definitely don't have that, any sort of, like, mouth feeling for words. I need to develop my speech better.
Yes. How do you picture your words, or how do you envision your words?
I envision words as, like, the actual physical words. Like, I see the words in my mind. I think, especially with people's names, like, when somebody tells me their name, I see the letters in my mind. Like, I can't think about somebody's name without knowing how to spell it because I need to see the name in my mind. So, like, I can't just take the sound and know what the name is.
I mean, I have that with names where I do need to know how to spell it, but it's definitely not because I need to see it. You were also saying that some names for you are lowercase.
Some are lowercase and some are capital. I'm not really sure why there's that distinction. You're definitely a lowercase first letter.
Interesting.
Lowercase all through.
Very, very interesting. I picture my name, I don't do this, but, like, in my head now thinking about it, I picture my name in all caps. M-E-H-E-K. I think it's because I spell
it so much.
Yes. Every time I introduce myself, I spell my name. M-E-H-E-K. Yes.
The way I think about numbers is different from the way I think about words, though.
Oh, interesting.
'Cause numbers, I think I do still, like, see the actual number, but it is more of, like, memorizing the concept of the numbers And it's definitely not, like, auditory like yours.
Mm-hmm.
That's very interesting.
Yes. I also picture numbers because for numbers it's more of the algebra, but remembering numbers is definitely more the sound. But then working with numbers, it's not even like that printed number necessarily. It's more close to that, but it's definitely like the algebra, seeing the algebra moving on like my mental sheet of paper. And then with words, it's very auditory. Yes.
When I think about memorizing numbers, I always think about, like, going back to 6th grade when I was first trying to memorize, like, as many digits of pi as I could. Like, how I thought about those numbers. I, like, break it down into blocks, but not any, like, specific. The blocks were very arbitrary. I just remember some short sequence of numbers, and they just fit together.
Like a puzzle.
Yeah.
Well, I remember, firstly, 3.14159536535897932384626432 is a song for me. It's not like...
Yeah, I learned, like, a couple years later, I heard somebody else, like, reciting it with a tune, and I thought that was really interesting, because, like, it felt so different from the way I had learned it, because I would not be able to sing the numbers to a tune. Like, they have some rhythm in my mind, but they have to be in these specific blocks. Like, I have blocks of, like, 5 or 6-ish numbers, and they just go together.
Oh, for me, it's definitely, like, if I break it into... It's more of a rhythm in a song for me, but it's definitely, like, 2 or 3 at most in each block. Yes. But it's interesting. You were saying something before that I wanted to come back to. I'm trying to remember specifically what it was before you were saying the pi thing. It was like, I don't know, I think that how people remember stuff is very interesting, like how you store your memories, like what sort of triggers memory.
Yeah, I've always felt like I have a really good memory. I just hold on to things really well, especially like academic things in school. I've always just remembered things very well. For some reason, like, I'm really afraid of forgetting things. I don't know, like, why. I feel like someday I'm just gonna forget. I'm not gonna be able to remember things, and that scares me.
For me, I always have to put it down with words. So I can remember a lot of times, like, the specific phrasing of something, or if I think of a certain word for a memory, then it's easier for me to remember. I feel like, I don't know that I'm necessarily afraid of forgetting stuff, but it's similar in that this is something my mom raised me with. It's like, she would always tell me after a party that I was like, oh, this was so much fun. She was like, spend 10 minutes tonight while you're lying in bed, remembering it over and over again so you keep the memory. And I feel like a lot of my writing and a lot of even like my speeches or even this podcast is like me mentally like going over stuff. Like, I want to remember talking to you guys. I want to remember all of it. I want to remember what I thought like at this age. So it's just all... write it all down.
This will be very cool to look back on in 10 years.
No. I feel like it's either going to be very cool or unbearable. I feel like it'll be both.
A little both.
Yeah, it's so hard to... It's been hard getting used to editing this and, like, listening to myself. More and more, it's not even my voice. It's that I want to go back in and be like, you should have said this instead. Or, oh, I want to ask this question. I'm sure I'm going to go back and, like... I'm going to listen to this podcast and be like, oh, you should have asked this question, and oh, this is what you were thinking in this moment. But it's very interesting.
Someday in 10 years, we can do reunion episodes.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Then just re-record on the same topics.
Yes, and we'll see what we think then. I mean, even what I thought, like, 2 years ago, or how I thought 2 years ago, vastly different than how I think now.
Wonder how our personality types will change then.
On the reunion podcast, we'll retake the test.
We'll all take the test together.
It was... Oh, I remembered what I was going to say. Memory. It was words. I had to figure out what the word was. But I remember the first time I realized you thought the same way that I did. This was... I don't know if you're going to remember this. We were sitting in the lounge and we were doing that puzzle. Yes, the puzzle.
I remember the puzzle.
And I remember we were sitting there and we didn't say a word the entire time. We just looked at each other and we were like, we're going to do this puzzle. And you were like turning over the pieces in a certain way to organize, because on the back of the pieces they had like letters based on the section of the puzzle, and so you were sorting them based on that, and I was like sorting them on the edge, and we were just like passing each other things, not a single word spoken throughout this, and we probably finished that like 500 600 piece puzzle. It was partially done, but we probably finished in like 20 minutes, 25 minutes, and just the whole time, no words, just passing each other pieces back and forth, scooting the puzzle one way or another. And it was one of the first times I've had like that experience where I was like, I know exactly what wavelength she's on. She is exactly like, we were just exactly in sync.
Yeah, for me, doing that puzzle, that was actually the first time I felt like I really, like, got to know you.
Yeah,
which is really
I know what you
weird
mean. I thought the exact same thing. That was the exact thing that was... See, we were
thinking the same. No, because I feel like before that we, like, knew each other, we'd hung out with our friends, but, like,
right.
I didn't really know you. And then when we did that puzzle together, I just felt like that was when I got to know you.
I felt like I understood you so much better after doing that. It's so funny to hear, because in my head I was thinking, like, this is such a weird thing.
I know, it was just when we just did a puzzle together.
Yeah.
It was the same experience.
It was the exact same experience for both of us. This is what I mean when I say you and I are on the same wavelength in a lot of ways. It's so interesting because, you know, came from different places, different interests in a lot of ways. You took a gap year. There's so many ways that we could have never met each other, but we're so like it feels like we're exactly in sync in a lot of ways.
Meant to be.
Meant to be. Yes, just two girlies. Yeah, it's been very fun. I feel like that's also a thing here at MIT is like you meet people who are in some way or another so in tune with you in a way that you've never experienced before.
Yes. I've been getting a lot of that.
Yes.
You just meet your people here.
Mm-hmm. It's so fascinating how, like, you'll meet someone and then you'll be talking to them, and at one point you're just going to be like, oh, this is something that no one has ever understood about me before. Mm-hmm. It's fascinating. Maybe we're just all crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Meet more
we're
crazy
all
people.
So weird. That's the goal, is to meet all of the crazy people that are crazy in the same ways that we are.
Yes.
And then we can understand them, and we can bond over puzzles.
Learn about the way we all think.
Yes.
And talk about it.
I feel like we've been asking now everyone else like how they think.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Is there one of you in your head?
There's only one of me.
There's only one Timber in your head. There are two of me in my head. I don't think I'm schizophrenic. So in my head, there is the driver and there's the narrator. And the driver is the one that feels the experiences, feels the emotions. The narrator also has all of the experiences, but the driver is the one who specifically feels them, experiences, moves my like hands. And then the narrator is the one who most of the time is the one who's making me talk, but is the one who's in my head talking. So when my internal voice is the narrator, and also when I'm talking, it's the narrator talking for the most part. But sometimes the driver talks.
Sounds like the narrator's doing a lot.
The narrator is the one that talks and thinks, and the driver is the one that does and feels. And it's very much like it's very much that there are two, and they can interact too. It's like sometimes like the narrator will try and talk to the driver to calm them down, and sometimes the narrator, when the narrator is irritated, the driver will like go like take a walk or something. It very much feels like there's like two distinct. They're both me. It's not me and someone else, but it's very interesting. That's sort of what my internal monologue is like. Do you have an internal monologue?
I think so.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like trying to think about my internal monologue it's hard to think about like whether it's the same as other people's, because I don't know what other people's are like, but I do have thoughts.
You do have thoughts.
Yeah, it's not all empty in here.
Are they like, do you think, can you well, because you think very visually, or you process math very visually, so can you like very easily visualize things in your head?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Oh, that's so hard for me. I feel like I can almost never do that, like pure like visualization if I close my eyes. I can visualize things like, I could visualize like a floating cube that's blue with like red flashing dots if I'm like visualizing it there, like with my eyes open.
You said you in like an AR kind of way.
Yes, and like I can picture it like AR, but I can't picture it like VR. But
Yeah.
You can picture it like
It's
VR.
all VR.
Yes. Ah, that's so cool. I wish I could do that. And so is your internal monologue then also words, or is it partially visual as well?
I think my internal monologue, like my specific thoughts, are mostly words.
Mm-hmm.
I've got words and pictures, but I feel like I don't really think about things in terms of like just concepts. It's all words or pictures and concrete
I wonder what it would
things.
be like to just not have words in your head.
Yeah.
Like to think primarily in terms of either audio or visuals or even just abstractions. That would be wild.
I imagine that's sort of what dreams are like.
Yeah. Because I feel like there's a lot less. That's the one thing that's different about dreams, is there are less words in them for me. Or less than usual, which for me is mostly my mind is all words. That's all this up here is just words. But in dreams, it's the only time where I get a little bit less of that. Do you have any words in your dreams?
There are some, but it's definitely not a lot of words.
Mm-hmm.
It's just scenes, images, things happening like a movie.
Yeah. I feel like in dreams for me, almost always I don't remember what the words are, which is very rare for me, but I will remember talking because, again, talking and communicating is such a big part of how I interpret things and how I interpret the world. So, all of this to say that I can't shut up. But yes, it's the one time that there are less words, but even still it's very like word heavy. Yeah. Maybe this is why, because you do more visual arts and like physical crafts.
Mm-hmm.
Like you also do sewing and that sort of thing.
Yeah, a lot of crafty things. I've had a very crafty life. I like making things.
I also like making things, but I feel like I make very differently. I feel like I did some visual arts growing up because my mom was an artist, but most recently it's been a lot of writing, and then also this.
This is your crafty thing here.
This is my crafty thing. It's a interesting choice of craft.
It's all about words.
It's all about words.
Writing, talking words.
Mm-hmm. Even visuals I think of in terms of words. I think of like, I don't know, it's like
describe the visuals. Words.
Yeah, exactly. I think about like words like balance. I think about words like contrast. I think about that sort of thing rather than just the pure how it looks. I don't know.
That's very interesting.
Yeah. How do you feel like, do you feel like then when you're like trying to create something, it's always visual first? Like the image of it comes to you first, or how do you
I think
get
it's pretty
into it?
visual. I'm trying to think about when I make something like a craft versus when I'm like designing robotics parts. Like it's all pretty visual.
Because I'd imagine too there are a lot of similarities between the physical act of like building a robot and the physical act of craft, because there's a lot of precision, some repetitive movements, but a lot of understanding of what the repetition is for, soldering versus sewing.
Yeah. I feel like when I want to design something, like I just get the idea in my head and then I just like will draw it out, but I don't know where that idea comes from. It just appears.
Where do ideas come from?
Oh.
Let's figure this out. I also feel, I mean, it's hard to track exactly where it is, but I always feel like it's something to do with, again, with words, where I'll be thinking a lot more about an idea in terms of words describing the concept of like what I want it to be. Like I'll get the feeling, but my instinct is not necessarily to sketch it out, but to like write bullet points about it.
Well, yeah, my ideas definitely come from visual imagery, thinking about how things should move together, what they look like.
So do you have like a sketchbook or like an iPad that you are always drawing on?
Not a specific place, mostly scraps of paper all over the place.
I have the one thing that saved me from that, where it's like I'm just jotting down ideas on every scrap of paper I can find, is there's this sticky notes app on Windows laptops, because the nice thing is I can just open a new sticky note, and then even if you exit out, it stays there. And then I have that on my phone too, and so I'm just always jotting stuff down. There are definitely still a lot of my ideas that are somewhere on like Starbucks napkins, somewhere lost to time, but it's definitely hard to like keep them all in one place. Always coming up with ideas. Is that you? Are you an idea person or?
I think so, but it's more like I come up with ideas to solve a specific problem. It's not just spontaneous ideas all the time.
Oh, well, speaking of dreams, do you ever like go to sleep like thinking about a problem and then like dream about it?
I don't know about any specific instances of that happening. I think I have had experiences where like I've been aware of just ideas just coming to me, mostly when I'm running.
Oh.
I've done a lot of like long distance running. So I can remember times when I've just been like running alone for miles and miles, and then I'll just suddenly understand some mathematical concept that I just didn't have a full, complete understanding of before.
Your brain was working on it in the back of your head.
And then it just like pushes that thought out.
Yeah.
I finally understand calculus.
Yeah. Definitely. So that's something too that's very physical and very I guess repetitive and like meditative. I had more of that. I didn't do many physical activities, but I had a little bit of that with yoga and then with meditation, which I have done on and off through my life. But definitely the realization that your brain has been like fiddling with something in the back of your head, and then you just like think about it and you're like, oh, I have a new conception of this idea suddenly. It's so interesting. I wish we could harness that. I wish you could like push things and like go work on this in the back of your head while I'm doing like my dishes.
You could train it to do that.
Yeah, that's what we need to figure out how to do. Then we could get more done. And then we would just be more busy though. We would just use it to like do
We're
more
already
and more
too
and more.
busy.
We do so many things. That's the thing, because at MIT I feel like it's like you have everything in the world as an option, and so you just want to do everything.
I want to do everything so bad.
There's not enough time here. It's hard.
I'm doing too many things, and it's very hard, and it takes so much time, but I don't want to do less things. I love doing all the things.
I think it's worthwhile to attempt to do more things than you might be capable of, to see what your limit is.
I still need to keep adding things so I can find where that breaking point is.
And then you know. But I feel like you have an ambitious semester plan.
Yes.
We've been talking about this. Six
Lots of
classes?
6 classes on the docket.
And you're definitely not going to use that and you're not going to just be doing academics.
6 classes and then some.
And then some. It's going to be interesting.
It's a fun thing.
It's just going to get more intense from here. That's the crazy thing. Is like I feel like first semester was kind of chill, and then it got way more intense this semester. And now I'm just imagining if it gets more and more intense every semester.
It's hard to imagine it getting more intense
I know. It's definitely work hard, play hard.
Absolutely.
But that's what I want right now. After I don't know, I think that you've said after your gap year, after the pandemic, it's like after so much time to just sit and think and process, I want to just go.
It's been a lot of nothing, and now I just need to be on all the time, always
speed
doing
ahead.
something.
Yeah.
Gap
This
year
summer
was
will
good.
be nice, though, to, like, see what it's like to go back to doing a little bit of nothing. It'll be
I feel like
interesting.
I'm gonna have a really hard time doing that. Like, I already have so many things planned that I just want to do all these things. I want to learn new things this summer. It's gonna be hard to rest and relax.
Oh, yeah. Go, 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 go. There's so many things, because there's so many things also just in general that I want to do in my life that is like every second I want to be doing something new. I want to be going after new things, and it's so interesting. That's what my mind is actually working on in the back of its head. It's like, how can I do everything that I want to do? It's a big question, but yes, it's always what we're thinking about. But this weekend is going to be a good example of that. It's just
This weekend's
everything.
gonna be very fun.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think probably it's time to start this weekend.
Get started on our weekend.
We do still have homework for tonight. This is a true fact. We do still have homework.
Well, we should get to it.
We should get to it. On that note, thank you so much for listening, and this has been On the Dome.